My name is Takasaka Aeda. I'm a professional chef, and today I'm going to show you the best way to make sushi at home. We'll be going over techniques the pros use to make perfect sushi. This is Sushi 101. Today we'll be making kappamaki, which is a cucumber roll, and a tekkamaki, which is tuna roll. Tekkamaki and kappamaki are such classics in terms of sushi rolls, and this is something that I grew up eating and I loved. I think to make the kappamaki and tekkamaki will require a little bit of getting used to and learning some skills, but once you have those down, I think making these two rolls is very doable and achievable at home. All right, let's get started. Sushi is really all about the rice. Everyone has this idea that it's the ingredients, the proteins inside, but really the focus and what you really want to get perfect is the rice. So the rice I have here today, this is a Matsuri brand rice. The most common type of rice you'll find in the market, that's Japanese short grain, is a varietal called koshihikari. To cook the rice, I will be using a rice cooker. The rice cooker does have a setting specifically for sushi rice. This will make your life a lot easier. You just have to wash the rice, put it in the machine, follow the directions, set it, and you'll have fantastic results. So today I'll be making basically 2 cupfuls of this, and I'll be setting this aside into a separate bowl so that we can go ahead and wash the rice. This first wash is going to be very milky in color, and it's important that we try to strain this and get rid of this water as quickly as possible so that starchy water does not go back into the rice. The reason why we want to remove the starch is to make sure that the stickiness is adjusted properly. If we leave all the starch on there, the finished product will end up being gummy and sticky. So this is the first wash here. You can see clearly a lot of the starch is in here, and you can see kind of the milky color of the water. And every time I'm doing a rinse, I do want to agitate the rice just slightly. I'm just using basically a claw of my hand and just gently moving the rice around and making sure that the starch is suspended in the water before discarding that water. This should be the last rinse that we do, and we can see that the water is running pretty clear now. Once the rice is washed properly, we're going to go ahead and let the water drain out. Generally, for a consistency matter, I like to set a timer for 5 minutes so that the amount of water that's draining is consistent every time I make this recipe. I'm going to go ahead and gently jump in the washed rice into the pot. Then I'm going to just get some clean water and fill the pot up to the indication of the number 2. We're going to go ahead and put this into our rice cooker. We can go ahead and hit the cooking button. And it'll play fantastic music. And that's how we know that the rice cooker is on and ready. This rice cooker should take just around 40 minutes to finish the cooking process. While the rice is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and make the sushi vinegar. So the recipe I'm using here today will be starting with 2 cups of rice vinegar. Rice vinegar is a little bit different from your just straight white distilled vinegar. It does have a little bit of a nutty flavor to it. And here I have the salt and sugar already measured out. 1/4 cup of the salt and 3/4 of a cup of sugar. This is a lot of solids going into this liquid. So we want to give it a thorough mix in the beginning and then let it settle for about a minute. And then we can see whether the sugar and salt has dissolved by looking at the bottom of the bowl. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop in a piece of kombu here. This is a dried kelp seaweed. Adding this piece of kombu here, this is gonna add a lot more umami and depth of flavor to this rice vinegar, and it'll also help balance out some of the salt and vinegariness. So now that our sushi vinegar is ready, we're gonna set this aside and start working on our other ingredients. We have our ingredients here for our kappamaki and our tekkamaki, the cucumber and the tuna. In order to prep these, we want to cut these down to the size of the nori. The size of the nori produced in Japan is standardized. So this is your full sheet. These are actually rectangles. And so you can see the lines indicating this way, and actually it's slightly longer this way than this way. It's not a perfect square. And so just very easily what we can do here is take one sheet, fold it in half, and then this way we can just gently split this into 2. I have a couple pieces of Persian cucumber here. You can use really any kind of cucumber. I like to use either the Japanese varietal or Persian cucumber. There's less seeds in here, and these cucumbers tend to be a little bit less watery. Try to find the halfway mark of this nori. And I'm gonna cut these cucumbers down to about the half size so that they'll sit nicely side by side inside the roll. I'm gonna go ahead and quarter these, and so I'm just gonna cut this in half and then take the halves and cut those in half as well. Again, the seeds is where there's the most water, and so I'm gonna go ahead and remove the seeds from the cucumbers. And so now that I have all the seeds removed, I'm just gonna go ahead, I think for this size I can cut this into thirds. So next I'm gonna be working with the tuna. So really important here in sourcing these ingredients, especially when we're talking about proteins for sushi use. We want to make sure that we're sourcing it from someone we trust and that it is sushi grade. And so here I was able to go to a Japanese market that has a fish butcher department, and they have all the sushi grade fish that they serve and treated in such a way so that it's really eliminating kind of cross-contamination and making sure that it's safe to consume raw. Talking about freshness, you want to make sure that your tuna is bright red. If you start to see oxidation or rust color, you'd want to avoid eating that raw. So anytime you're dealing with sushi, I think it's always the best idea to procure your ingredients on the same day that you will be consuming it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this down to the size of the seaweed. This is a little bit thick for what we're going to be using this for, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this into half and then cut this into strips. Using a nice rocking motion front to back and trying to get this cut all in one stroke is ideal. Anytime we're dealing with proteins that are meant for raw consumption, we want to make sure that the ingredients are always cold. And so the temperature range we're looking for is anywhere from 33 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to 41, but never past 41. And so now that we have all of our ingredients ready, we'll be mixing the sushi vinegar with the rice. Traditionally, when making sushi rice, we use a vessel called hangiri. This is a vessel that essentially looks like a large tub made out of Japanese cypress wood. But if you don't have one, just using a regular bowl is just fine. So the way I like to measure out the sushi vinegar is 20% by volume of the dry rice. So 20% is 1/3 cup of rice vinegar. So we're gonna go ahead and measure out 1/3 of a cup, and we're gonna go ahead and just empty out the entire contents of the rice into our bowl. And here we're gonna take our sushi vinegar and try to evenly pour this over all the rice. Just like when we're washing the rice, if we're agitating too much, it's gonna keep releasing starch. And so all we're gonna do here is just mix gently, and something we call kiri, which is to cut. And so this is the final stages here where we're trying to make sure that each grain is separated and has the sushi vinegar evenly distributed on each grain of rice. This is really important that the rice is nice and warm while we're doing this. You know, because of the starch content, if this is cold rice, the starch will coagulate and kind of tighten up, and it'll be much harder to mix, and then it also will release more starch because it is harder to mix. So we want to make sure it's nice and warm, piping hot, right when the rice cooker is done cooking is really the ideal time for us to mix the vinegar in. Now that the rice is all mixed with the vinegar, I'm going to go ahead and put this right back into the rice cooker. This actually has a warm function, so once we put it back in the pot, it'll stay warm and be ready for when we make our rolls. One of the most difficult parts about making sushi is actually handling the sushi rice. Traditionally, chefs use just a little bit of vinegared water to put a little bit of moisture so that the rice does not stick to their hand. It is a little bit difficult to get the right amount and the right proportions of water on your hand. And so I'm just gonna show you a little tip here to make your life a lot easier. So I have here a pair of vinyl gloves, and I'm just gonna take some neutral oil and just put a couple drops on the gloves, and this will protect my hands from any rice sticking. The first roll we're gonna make is the kappamaki. So kappamaki is gonna have the nori seaweed, the seasoned sushi rice, a little bit of wasabi, the cucumber batons, and that's it. We have the half sheet of nori that we cut here from before. And there's two sides of nori. There's the shiny side and then kind of the rough side. With the shiny side down and the rough side up, we're gonna place that right on the bottom of the edge of the, what we call the makisu, the bamboo mat. So now next is to put on the rice. And so I'm just gonna grab a comfortable handful here, and I'm just gonna shape it into this kind of oval shape. And I'm gonna go along and leave maybe a couple centimeters on the top of the nori and start using both hands here to distribute the rice across the seaweed. This style of roll is very easy to overstuff, and so think less is more here. And so on the top edge here, I'm actually gonna create kind of a dam, and this is where all of our ingredients are gonna rest upon. And that's gonna really help so that when we're doing the rolling process, things are gonna stay nice and tucked in. And the remainder of the rice, I'm gonna go ahead and spread this out to the bottom. And again, here on the bottom, we don't have to go all the way down. This remaining rice on the bottom here is what's going to stick onto the dam that we created, which will finish and seal the roll. So next I'm going to put wasabi into the roll. And so we have a tube wasabi. So I'm just going to take a little bit here, put it on my finger here, and I'm going to go ahead and spread this out. This is a personal preference depending on the strength of the wasabi you're using and how much you like. You can go ahead and put on as much or as little. When placing our ingredients, we want to make sure that it's all the way up against the dam. And now we're gonna roll the nori, and we're gonna aim for this edge of the bamboo mat to come right past the dam, so that this area here, where it's empty with rice, will then adhere to the rice on the other end. And once I get here, now here I'm gonna just press gently to make sure that the rice and the seaweed stick together, and kind of going for a square shape. And so I'm gonna press on front and back, and then press also on the top. And then we should be able to see here that there's a little bit of seaweed left over. And so once I open this up, I'm just gonna turn this over, and that little bit of flap should be sitting right on the bottom of the roll. So the ingredients here for the tekkemaki: the nori seaweed, the seasoned sushi rice, wasabi, and the tuna. And so again, with the shiny side down and the rough side up, we're gonna place that right on the bottom of the edge of the bamboo mat. And so I took the gloves off, and so I'm using a little bit of water to moisten my hands. And same process here, going from left to right, going to spread the rice out, and then dragging the rest of the rice down towards the bottom of the seaweed. And here again, we're gonna put some wasabi, and now we're gonna fill this roll with tuna. And the same thing we did with the cucumbers, we're gonna go ahead and make sure that the tuna is up against the dam on the top. So again, we're gonna go and make sure that the bamboo mat goes all the way over to the edge. And again, once we get here, we wanna go ahead and squeeze, trying to make a square shape. There should be that little bit of leftover of the flap of nori, and then go ahead and fold that over. And here we can see there's a little bit of overstuffing. The rice is starting to kind of protrude on the ends. If that does happen, no big deal. As long as the roll is staying closed, it's still gonna be delicious and taste great. I just have a wet cloth here. Just a little bit of moisture on your knife. Should be just enough moisture so that the rice won't stick so much to your blade. And then from here, we're gonna cut this into thirds. And then hopefully we have 6 even pieces. So next we have the tuna roll, and again, same process here. And if you really want to go really neat and really be presentable, you can always go ahead and cut the edges here to make the edges beautiful. And then again, cut this into thirds. So this is kind of a young ginger that's been pickled in vinegar, salt, and sugar. This is really commonly eaten between pieces to kind of cleanse your palate. The final touch here is we're just gonna have a little bit of soy sauce on the side. This is just your regular kind of Japanese run-of-the-mill straight soy sauce. If you want, as an option, some people like a lot of wasabi, and so you can always add a little bit of wasabi on the side. And that is the best way to make sushi at home. We're ready to eat. I'm gonna start with a cucumber roll here. Just gonna dunk a little bit in the soy sauce. Oh. Oh. Wasabi's got a kick. So just something to keep in mind, actually, talking about wasabi. Wasabi actually has a relationship with fat. So the more fat something has, the more wasabi you can put in it. So obviously, talking about cucumbers here, really no fat here. So you're gonna really feel and accentuate kind of the fire that you get from the wasabi. But really great, the rice is nicely seasoned. I get the aroma of the nori as I'm bringing the piece to my mouth. Just a little dunk. So yeah, I mean, the simplicity here is what I love the most. The akame has that nice, gentle flavor of iron, the nice kick from the wasabi, seasoned rice, and again, the aroma from the nori is really heightens the entire dish. The skill in terms of rolling the roll itself takes a little practice, but once you get those kind of few skills down, I think making sushi at home is something very easy to do.